rights and duties in collaboration with the weekly lecture series. We are gathered here to explore a topic that stands at a very intersection of the law, ethics and global responsibility. Transnational corporations and human rights predicament. In an era where multinational enterprises shapes economies and influence societies, the balance between corporate power and the human rights protection has become increasingly complex. This session aims to shed light on those challenges and help us understand the evolving international frameworks and accountability mechanisms that seek to address them. We are here with true privilege to have with us Dr. Dayananda Murthy, a distinguished scholar and respected academician who will be leading through his insightful discussion. His expertise and contributions to this field make him the perfect speaker to help us navigate this nuanced subject. Before we move on, I would also like to inform that towards the end of this session, we will be distributing the participation certificates and announcing the winners and runners of the recently held RTI drafting competition. We will formally conclude this program after that. Without taking much of your time, let us begin the session. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dayananda Murthy sir to take the floor and share his insights with us.
Thank you, both the team from the weekly series as well as the Center for Human Rights and Duties for the invitation, and I believe that a very important topic will be discussed today. Right. The title of the topic is very clear, right? I have two things in mind when I say that. Transnational corporation and human rights. Predicament means, are we feeling that it is embarrassing to discuss this point? Or why should a transnational corporation worry about human rights? It's embarrassing for the transnational corporation to be discussing about human rights. Is that the point we have to look into? How does both of them get connected, right? Transnational corporation and human rights get connected. I think that's what I'll be justifying as to what exactly is the title in the next discussions. Two things. 12th century, we had someone called as Basavanna, who was a social reformer, where he clearly said that human dignity exists on birth. Every one of us should respect the human dignity of the other. Right? He spoke something about two things. Kayaka, that's nothing but divine worship. Work, that's your God, basically. The second one is distribution of assets. Distribution of whatever you have. Those are the concepts which we started basically in those days of 12th century. And then we have Immanuel Kant coming in. He speaks something about inner human being, inner human rights of a person concerned here. Not just a human rights, inner human rights of a person concerned here, which once again has been recognized in the 1993 Second World Conference on Human Rights, where every one of a human being deserves respect. When I say deserves respect means Kant is speaking something about the inner consciousness of a person should respect the other party. Here, the other party expects that particular human right to be protected at all cost. That is what is the idea behind it. Then comes your Article 1 of the UDHR, which once again recognizes the human rights of every individual in this society. Right? So on this ground, I go to the next point, which I think we have to look into the right. What is the purpose of a business? What is the purpose of business? When I say what is the purpose of business means, what is their idea? What is their objective of carrying on business? Is it profits? Is it to gain success of the company concerned? When they think of carrying on business with an objective of making profits, can they upset you sometimes? Can they harm you sometimes? Probably yes. For example, a small price rise on a product, will it hurt you? Are you clear? For example, today we are speaking something about GST being reduced. But what are the people doing now? The product price is increased, GST is reduced. Are you clear? So basically what are you feeling here? They have an objective to do business, they have to do profits, they have to get profits, but in the meanwhile there is a possibility of hurting the consumers at large. How did it evolve altogether? I think we have to go to Adam Smith for that purpose, right? When you speak of Adam Smith, he very clearly said that why do a butcher, baker and a brewer makes things for you? Is it because he is helping you by manufacturing it, or is it because you need it? Correct? Are you clear with this? So basically when you speak of all these three things, every one of us are creating certain things, manufacturing certain things. Why? Because it's not necessarily that I need it or necessarily I want to give it to them. It is because the other person also wants that. Are you clear? As a consumer, I want every product which is available in the market. Yes or no? Right? That's the way in which you have to look into in this case. And what does it reflect? Adam Smith, when he says that every one of us do for yourself, when every one of you buy yourself for yourself in that case means, refers to something greed coming into picture here. Are you clear? So Adam Smith is speaking something about everyone's greed becomes everyone needs. Right? That's the way in which you have to understand how exactly the businesses are doing or carrying on business for you. Is it for you or is it for themselves? Right? That's the way in which you have to understand basically when you look into the businesses are concerned here. Then if they are doing it right, if I am needing those products or services, they are doing it for you, then in such cases, everything is legal, is moral. So there is no question of immorality coming into picture when he makes a profit. If I invest certain amount of money, I make profits out of it, there is nothing which is immoral there, right? So is it everything which is legal is moral then? Okay? So that's the way in which you have to look into how the businesses do carry on business at a particular point of time. Now what is Peter Drucker is saying is, Peter Drucker is considered to be the father of management, right? Management studies. He very clearly says in his book, The New Reality, he very clearly accepts that there is a transformation in the society, whether it is social or political. Remember, today we are living with transnational corporations. When I say transnational corporations, we are speaking something about a company which incorporated in one place but having businesses all over the world, right? So that's the transnational corporation we are referring to, which in other sense they also use it as multinational corporation in some circumstances, right? So let us make it common here. I'll be referring to as transnational corporation in further discussion. So when I speak on this, Peter Drucker very clearly said that there is a lot of new theory which has developed because of the influence of the transnational corporation which has come into picture. It may be either social existence or economic conditions. So we have to live with that reality. That is what Peter Drucker says specifically. Then you have two things in mind. Is that transnational corporation are doing some benefit to you? Are they part of your economic development? Are they putting efforts into the national development for you? Right? Yes. In that sense, if you look into the positive part of it, they are doing many things for us. Are you clear? The transnational corporation does many things for us. Let us take some examples here. Foreign investments. Whenever you speak of a transnational corporation, do you expect foreign investment to come to a particular country? When I say particular country, here refers to host country. If a foreign company wants to invest in my country, the host country requires money. Correct? Do you require money? Yes, every country requires this particular money. Investment comes through either foreign direct investment or the FPI investments, foreign portfolio investments. Every country needs it because that is where we think of development happening in this case. Okay? Now in addition to that, what are the other things you get? Employment opportunity, right? Second one, you have basically wealth creation. When I say wealth creation, I'll tell at the end what will happen in that particular wealth creation. Technology transfer happens. Whenever there is a technological development, we are thinking of adopting the technology into our country, right? So that is where we speak of it. Then supply chain management improves. So these are some of the advantages when you speak of the multinational company or a transnational company coming into picture here. In addition to that, let me take an example. Employment generated. It is said the transnational corporations actually provide, in a developed country, almost 4% of it is through transnational corporation. And when it comes to developing countries, it's around 12%. 12% is a huge employment opportunity, right? So 4 in developed country, 12 in developing countries. It's a good opportunity when you look into in the positive sense. Correct, na? Then in addition to that, what are the other things you get it? For example, will the government get revenue? Yes, huge revenue in that particular sense. Okay. Then you have the R&D, motivation, and ultimately innovation. As I told you, there is technology transfer. Once there is a technology transfer, it leads to innovation. R&D happens in this case. So that's one thing which has to be taken into in positive sense. Then, does it improve infrastructure? Yes or no? It improves infrastructure, right? That's the positive side of it. Then you have boost exports. It also boosts exports. Increases competitiveness. Remember, when you see a product of a particular country coming into India, we also want to have a competitive product. It improves our competitiveness when it comes to the foreign investments are in that particular sense. The transnational corporation coming into picture in this case. Then you have your standard of life. Does it increase? Yes or no? Yes. Everyone wants iPhone 17, Pro 17 today, right? It actually increases your quality of your life. Standard of life may increase in that sense as a whole, right? So these are some of the positive points which you may have to look into when it comes to the transnational corporations. That's not so, right? We'll see how exactly it affects us in a different sense altogether. Now, has these 3 words changed the world what we see today? Yes or no? We popularly call it as LPG. Has it changed our life? 1991 in India specifically, it opened the market. That's where we speak of a globalization coming into picture. When I speak of globalization, you are expecting everyone to be part of your economic development. Correct? Everyone. In the sense, when I say everyone means not only within, but also from outside the country. You are opening the market to all the transnational corporations in this case. When that happens, basically, you have to see that promotion of free trade happens. Correct? That's how we got WTO. When I speak of WTO, free trade is nothing but allowing one country to enter into another country through free trade policies. That is where globalization comes into picture, right? The second one, you speak of one economy, one market. I develop something in America, I can sell it anywhere in the world. Google, Microsoft, wherever it is developed, it's all over the countries here, right? So one economy, one market scenario comes into picture when you speak of a transnational corporation in this case. What does it refer to? It refers to interconnection. Interconnection between 2 countries, interdependence within 2 countries. Right? Today, can you work without Google? Yes, you can say Zoho has come in India, you can do it. But still, you need Google, you need Gmail, you need Microsoft, right? So it's interdependent and interconnected at any point of time here, right? That's the way which has to be taken care of. Now, what if these transnational corporation adopts good governance? Is it good for us? Right? It's very good for us. It gives a lot of things, energy to every one of us when the transnational corporations actually adopt these good governance principles, because that actually protects your civil and political rights. Okay, when transnational corporation have, when I say transnational, it can apply to domestic company also. When it comes to good governance, remember that they will provide you political and civil rights being protected at any cost. That's the positive thing which transnational can give you. However, please remember that every caution has to be taken what ICT has done and AI has done to us today. Is it a revolution? It's a wonderful revolution, whether positive or negative in every sense, right? So we have to be cautious when transnational corporations are working on that line of ICT as well as AI being created in this case. So these are some of the things which you have to understand when it comes to transnational corporation. Now come to the core of my subject. How is human rights connected to transnational corporation? Should it worry about human rights? Should it worry about human rights at all? I am carrying on my business. I am investing my money. I am taking profits for it. Why should I worry about human rights? Correct? Or should I worry? We have to understand in that sense. Now, when I see that, is it a duty bearer? In a sense, can you shred away the duty of a transnational corporation? Correct? That's one thing. Or is it the duty of the transnational corporation to look into that? Yes, you do also have a right, or human right protection has to be. Non-state actor. Do you agree that it is a non-state actor? Yes or no? It's a non-state actor. Transnational corporation is a non-state actor. It's nowhere connected to the state. Correct? It's carrying on business. It's nowhere connected to the state. When it is not connected to the state, is it free for all? I can do whatever I want. Correct? That's where the responsibility of a state versus non-state comes into picture. Okay now? So when I speak of a non-state actor here or a state here, should I worry about human rights at all? As a transnational corporation, because I am a non-state actor, am I responsible to human rights at all? That's the way in which you have to look into. And this case has sovereignty of the state being outsourced. In the sense, has state forgotten its own responsibility and handed over that particular sovereignty to these transnational corporations. Why? Because I see that how transnational corporations have actually taken over your state to some extent or to an all extent as a whole, right? I'll be highlighting that part of the discussion. Now come to Professor Kenichi. Professor Kenichi has very clearly highlighted in his work that two major things are happening. One, the influence of the state is reducing. The influence of the transnational corporations are increasing. Now what does it mean basically? It refers to what? When I say state is responsibility is coming down or state duty is coming down, whereas transnational corporations power is increasing basically. Right? In addition to that, the third thing he says is there are regional things which are coming out. For example, you have heard of BRICS coming in, right? NAFTA coming in. All these are regional things which are coming, wherein they also have a role to play in addition to the states here. So, state has got down its influence. PNC has been more influential than the states. How exactly? I'll be highlighting that part of it to support his argument on that line. Okay, that's one thing. Then you have Asian Human Rights Commission, very specifically stating it that it has held hostage. Means the transnational corporations have held the state hostage by controlling the state itself. That is where we speak of a loss of sovereignty of a state. Are you clear? When I say state sovereignty, the state sovereignty is taken over by the transnational corporation. There are many methods they use it for that. I'll highlight that in the next discussion which we will have basically. Now when I speak of this, people who are supporting globalization, they are happy transnational corporations are developing. Yes or no? See, if I am a multinational company or a TNC, I'll be happy if globalization is there, right? And if I am a supporter of globalization, I am happy. Correct? But on the other side of the coin is people who hate globalization. Do they hate globalization? Yes. right? There are some people who hate globalization because they say domestic market may come down, the domestic people will suffer for various reasons. That reason I will be highlighting in the next discussion which happens. So basically what happens is, when you speak of globalization, what globalization has created to us? Has privatization affected your domestic market? Very clear? These are the things which you have to look into in that case. Then state versus country versus TNC. Has state become weaker? Has TNC become more powerful? Very clear? That's what we have to look into in that case. I have examples to analyze that particular point. For example, are the state colluding with the transnational corporation because they want private investments or foreign investments? Is it actually compromising its position because they want foreign investments to come into a particular country? For example, India wants foreign investment. Are they compromising on their own domestic laws? Clear? That's the question which always triggers when the transnational corporation comes in. When that compromise happens, human rights goes to a toss. Correct? Na? When state itself is colluding with the transnational corporation, your human rights doesn't matter for me. Clear? That's the way in which you have to understand how exactly, why we are referring state is lesser powerful than TNC, because of a reason. Right? I'll take an example for that. Okay? Let me take 3 examples. The first one is your IMF and World Bank. Do they give you money? You know what are the conditions they put you? Right? Whenever the money is sanctioned from an IMF or from a World Bank, remember there are a lot of conditions put on the developing countries. Why? Because IMF doesn't want, but there is a lobby behind it. The transnational corporation influence the money flow into the developing countries. Are you clear? That's where we speak of one particular group of people actually helping transnational corporation in an international scenario. Remember, IMF, World Bank works in an international perspective, right? They are actually promoting by bringing some kind of discriminatory practices to developing countries in that case. WTO is the second example. When I speak of WTO, you might have heard of what is called as national treatment and most favored nations, right? Clause. Now, how do they adopt that? It is not depending on equality before all countries here. It depends upon how powerful a country you are. Are you clear? So basically, this is also not because WTO wants, because the transnational companies behind that want that policy to be adopted by the WTO there. Are you clear? So these transnational corporations not only influence a state, they may also influence an international institution basically. Okay? That's one thing. The third one is your bilateral agreement or multilateral agreements. When I enter into an agreement with you as a country, I know that you are a developing country, I am a developed country. Will I see that you are equal to me? No. Why is America imposing tariff on us, or for that matter on other countries? Because they think they are more powerful, we don't want you at all. Right? So that's the way in which all these 3 things, whether it is IMF or World Bank, whether it is WTO, or whether it is bilateral or multilateral agreements, remember that there is a scene behind it. Someone influencing these institutions to see that how exactly your state is affected or the domestic market is affected at large. Why? Because the transnational corporations are probably controlling on that particular line. Okay? Take an example. I have 7 countries here, GDP. The GDP of 7 countries. I believe we are happy that India is now on 4th position at $4.1 trillion of GDP. Right? Now this is the country's GDP. I will go to market capitalization of certain companies. Okay? See the market capitalization of these companies. NVIDIA, $4.15 trillion, almost equal to India's GDP. Right? Okay? Now come to the next one. Microsoft, $3.75 You imagine Microsoft is 3.75. You see what is UK? 3.84, almost reaching UK GDP in this case. My market capitalization is reaching in that way. Are you clear? That's one example I can tell you. Further, these are the 10 companies which I have for our understanding of how exactly the transnational corporation can actually control a country in this case. How exactly it works out. I'll take an example here. Now imagine here, if I take these 5 top companies versus 5 top countries, or one country for that particular matter, or similarly I take all these 10 countries and imagine I compare with the other things here. The result will be shocking for you. I'll tell you how it works. See this. The top 10 companies are second largest economy. It's not the country, remember, it's not the country, it is the companies which are on top 10. When I speak of 5 richest transnational corporation, it is coming as the 4th country here, 4th economy here. Are you clear? When I see the 4th one, you see India's GDP now, it is almost 4 times higher than India's GDP in this case. Okay now? Now in that circumstance, can I have control over a state? Yes or no? Can I have a control over a state? Possibilities exist that I may control the state in that case. In that case. Okay? Now how exactly it works out is basically Tesla. I'll tell you later because I have said Tesla there. I have an example in future. I will be telling you why Tesla is referred here. Okay now? Now come to 100 economies. When the analysis shows out of 100 economies, 51 economies are, means when I compare in a similar manner, 51 transnational corporations are bigger than countries by themselves. Okay? 51 countries. They are actually majority. Are you clear? 51 is a majority. They are majority compared to this countries concerned here. And transnational corporation almost control more than 51% of the international trade. So that reflects how exactly they are in control of the companies concerned or of the country concerned in that circumstance. Right? Now, generally, traditionally, international law says it is the state duty to protect human rights. Correct? Now, it's not any other person. It is the state duty to protect international law says that because it is state-centric and human rights should be protected by them. But on the other side, when you look into it, what does the state say? They speak something about sustainable development because international law speaks something about sustainable development and ultimately better quality of life should be taken care of by the state. So that's the traditional international law perspective. That human rights should be protected by state, quality of life should be provided by state, and ultimately it also looks into how the sustainable development will be taken care of. Traditional understanding of international law and human rights is that. Okay? So when you see this, basically, what happens? As we have seen how exactly the transnational corporation can be powerful, should it be made a subject of international law then? Because it's not a subject of international law today. When I say subject means, what do you mean by subject? When I say should it be made as a subject means, should it be governed by international law then? To be a subject, right? So should it be a subject of international law in that sense? So that's one question which has to be answered because...
So this is subject matter. Corporations are subject of public interest.
But directly no. Human rights no.
Not for human rights.
No. That's what I'll tell you. Human rights ke liye nahi hai, right? It's not. Okay? Then discard domestic law and social economic conditions. Yeah. And then you have 66% of the cases of human rights violations are happening in Asia, not excluding America. Okay now? So they are also violators of human rights at a particular time. Then I hope you all remember the 2 world wars. I think that was the reason why basically we are speaking something about human rights. The two world wars made us realize that human rights are also to be respected. I think that's the destruction which led us to understand how human rights is important for us. Okay, based on that, we'll highlight some of the examples now. All of you know what a subsidiary company is, right? There is a holding company in one country. I incorporate a subsidiary company in another country. Can I do anything under the subsidiary company, guys? Right? Okay? I incorporate in that sense. Okay? Na? So, what is the subsidiary's responsibility? What is the subsidiary's liability? Is based on domestic law. Correct? What if subsidiary does something? Can a holding company somewhere else be made liable in this case? Right? Are you clear? I'll take 2-3 examples. You'll come to know what I am actually expecting from your side. How many of you have seen this picture? I don't know how that photographer took that photo basically. Correct, na? What is this? It is the Bhopal gas tragedy. Subsidiary company, right, is in Bhopal. Where is the holding company? It's in United States of America, West Virginia, right? You have a holding company, you have a subsidiary company in India. Now, there is a gas leakage which happened. That's nothing but it's called as ecocide, right? The gas leak happened, methyl isocyanate leak happened. The holding company pressure cites its liability saying that everything happened in India, we are not responsible. We had no knowledge about what is happening in Bhopal, so we are not responsible. Okay? That was the argument of the holding company. They say that everything is concerned with subsidiary company in India. We are not bothered about what has happened in India. Whatever leak happened, it's their responsibility. Subsidiary company's responsibility, we are not responsible. Now, 3 disasters happened in Bhopal, correct? It's not 2, it is 3 disasters. What are those disasters basically, right? It is the world's worst industrial disaster, right? Second, the worst environmental disaster. The third one I'll add, it is the third legal disaster, judicial disaster. Okay, na? Why? Because judiciary also did not take care of the victims of Bhopal in this case. Of recently, 2022, remember a curative petition was filed before the Supreme Court for increasing the compensation to the victims. The Supreme Court rejected that particular application basically. After 38 years, victims of Bhopal are still struggling. Why? Because there was an environmental disaster. Water underneath the soil is still not safe. Are you clear? So, and why did I say judicial disaster? Environmental disaster, you know. Industrial disaster, you know, because almost around 3,800 people died. More than 20,000 stocks died. Stock means cow, animals and other things died, right? In addition to that, today also people are suffering. Genetically, they have suffered after the Bhopal gas tragedy even today, right? If you go to the hospitals in Bhopal, you'll know that how people are still suffering from the genetic defects which have been out of that particular danger which was caused by Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay, that's one thing. Judicial disaster. Why judicial disaster? For the reason the Supreme Court agreed for a $470 million compromise, giving away the criminal liability of a company. Remember that, okay? In one of the cases which I have referred here, I think you can refer this particular case of Urban Union Carbide Company versus Union of India, where India had a wonderful opportunity of creating environmental jurisprudence. Why? Because that was the first major industrial disaster which has happened. One of the paragraphs, section 36 of that particular paragraph of the judgment very clearly says, we lost an opportunity of creating a wonderful environmental jurisprudence in this case. You should have held the holding company responsible in those circumstances. But you went on to say that you went on a compromise on touch case. Correct? No criminal liability. In the compromise petition, they are telling no criminal liability of the company can be imposed upon them. It took almost 10 to 15 years to reopen the criminal case. I hope you all know or studied that particular point of law. Then they were held liable here, but still Anderson was absconding, company was absconding. Right? You find the application there. Company is absconding, the Union Carbide Company in the United States absconding. Anderson, who was the chairman of the company, was absconding. Though he died later, that's not a point which has to be taken. But remember, that was a judicial disaster we faced. Okay? It was a judicial disaster. Why? Because the compensation which was granted were very meager. You can imagine $470 million is nothing, because the claim in the beginning was $3 billion. And it was coming down to $470 million. Right? Why? Because state took up that responsibility. We will protect our victims. Unfortunately, state probably became complacent. Okay? Na? In the sense, did the government favor the holding company here? The conduct of the parties showed that they were hand in glue with the holding company. When Anderson came to Bhopal, he was arrested for a while, and remember, the government car took him to the airport, from airport to Delhi, from Delhi to US. He was flown out of Delhi urgently, because otherwise he would have been arrested in India and he would have been staying here. Okay? State became complacent to that particular act. Right? So everyone were actually going against this particular decision making. Okay? That's one example. Second example. How many of you have observed this? They are very popularly called, unfortunately we are saying that, they are called as Chernobyl children. Right? You have heard of Chernobyl? The nuclear power plant exploded, and remember, the next generation children were born in this way. Unfortunately, the nuclear power plant was exploded, making people suffer at a particular stage. I don't want to go further on this discussion. Then you have the next one, which coup without a gun and a weapon. What is it? It's basically Anapa? Right. What is that? You are bringing something gas. What is that? GM products. You call it as a GM product. Now see the difference between those two brinjal. Right? Which is GM, which is original? कौन सा original है, कौन सा GM है?
B is original, right one is BP brinjal.
No. B is GM, the other one is original.
That's what.
That decays. The original decays, GM doesn't decay. Are you clear? That is how they advertised. And that's why they wanted to push, Monsanto pushed this particular brinjal, but ultimately it took a different turn, and it so happened that we fought against Monsanto, and ultimately it was not coming into India as to brinjal is concerned, but still cotton is available. Right? Now Trump is forcing us to buy corn. Corn. 92% of corn is GM product. He wants us to buy that particular product, and that's the reason why India is resisting that we don't want to buy a GM product. Because we have sufficient corn, we don't want to have. For example, we have around 42 billion tons of corn, which is sufficient for us. We need 42.7 million. We already have 42 million. So 7.07 million we will export from somewhere else. I don't want your corn. But America is threatening India, saying that you will have repercussions for this. If you don't buy corn from us, you will have a repercussion on this. Okay? That's where you speak of, without using a gun, without using a weapon, you are pushing that GM into other countries. And remember, GM is, once again, I think if you look into the consequences here, the seeds have to be bought from them. You have to pay royalty. Soil erosion will happen, means soil will get destroyed. Right? You have to depend on them after that. Okay? You cannot produce originally from your own source in the DNA in that particular case. So that's the product which we are actually refusing. You know, one thing happened in this case. Nusinedo Seeds Limited versus Monsanto. Actually, Justice Ravindran and another judge of the Delhi High Court gave a wonderful judgment on Monsanto should not be allowed. Right? Why? Because they said it is genetically modified, it will affect our health as well as the soil. So Justice Ravindra Bhatt has very clearly identified in the judgment of the Delhi High Court. You know, something shocking happened after that. Approached the Supreme Court, striking out that particular judgment, said, let the single judge hear the case once again. Because the division bench, they said, have exceeded their jurisdiction. Are you clear? So this is how, who plays the role behind it, we don't know basically. Okay? So sensational thing happened here. The Supreme Court taking up the case, when the appeal was filed before the Supreme Court very clearly brushed aside this division bench judgment and said, let the single judge decide on that particular point. And remember, the battle still continues. Okay, na? So the battle still continues on that. Like basically, the reason why we are refusing GM is because it speaks something about biosafety and security concerning this case. But unfortunately, the developed countries want to push the things into the developing countries in this case. Then, how many of you have seen this? Right. Mexico Gulf oil spill. One of the worst case of oil spill which has happened here. How much? You cannot imagine. 120 million gallon of oil was leaked into the sea. Taken? And remember, it went deep into the sea, 4,500 feet deep into this. And you have heard of seagulls. What is it? Laughing seagulls. There is something called as laughing seagulls. Right? They laugh. But the voice comes as if it is laughing. 32% have been reduced. Why? Because of the oil spill here. The number of people who died are 11. We may say, what is 11? Nothing. But remember that the environmental harm which has created, the human rights violations which is created, including animal rights, flora and fauna, is huge in this case. Okay, that's the way in which you have to look into this particular example here. Johnson & Johnson is once again a human right violation because it is considered to be a toxic talc. When I say toxic talc means, why? Because the people who started using it were affected from ovarian cancer. Right? And ultimately, 22 women in America filed a case against the company for almost around 470 crore rupees. I have converted into rupees here. 470 crore was granted to those women of 22. Now, the company is trying to compromise for 70,000 crores to settle the matter, because in all the cases here in America or in India today, you can go for a settlement. Administrative settlement, you call it as administrative settlement. Now the company is going for a settlement almost around 70,000 crores for whatever they have done. And this is a horrific case of what we call it as mining cobalt. Right? I told you Tesla, right? I'll connect it here. Now, mining cobalt is an example where you have heard of Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a huge resource of lithium. Okay? Lithium and other products which are required for computer generation and other things. Okay, na? So here is a case where, remember, child labor is huge. Almost around 35,000 people are used, the children are used for the purpose of mining, and out of which even a 6-year-old person is there. Can you imagine a company using these people for mining? Are you clear? 6-year-old person, yeah. And remember, what is that? What are the companies involved? Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, then Dell and Tesla. Why? Because you have huge resources of the mines available in that particular Democratic Republic of Congo. They want to extract it. Who are the scapegoats? The employees. The people who are working in Congo are the people who are affected in this circumstances. Yeah. Then you have the other example of asbestos. I hope you all know asbestos is basically banned in all the countries to some extent, right? Now, that was a case which I think highlight later on, but I'll refer to the other cases which are here. 2006, a company called as Refugura dumped all its waste, toxic energy waste, into a country called as Abidjan, right? All the waste petroleum, it brought by a ship. It was brought by a ship and dumped everything into Abidjan. It so happened that 1 lakh people had to go for a medical examination in that particular sense. Are you clear? That's the way in which multinational or transnational corporations are working in that circumstance. I hope you all have seen this Shell Petroleum. It is a company, see how the drinking water is there when the shell company is actually working in that particular area in that case. Okay? Then you have our own Coca-Cola. Kerala. Why? Because the case happened in India, right? Kerala, you know that what Coca-Cola was doing basically, right? It was actually stealing water. It's said to be stealing water in this case. Lot of water is consumed for the purpose of manufacturing Coca-Cola. Are you clear? The Coke which is used is 2%, whereas the water required is huge for the manufacture of that particular product. So people in Kerala stood against Coca-Cola and ultimately succeeded in stopping that particular river to be done. And remember, that is done by many other countries. I'll highlight that. And one more thing which happened was apartheid in South Africa. Coca-Cola was silent in promoting apartheid in South Africa. Now, being silent is also a human right violation, because it is supporting the human rights violation. When the government is doing something with reference to apartheid, you keep quiet. You are not supporting there should not be apartheid. You are keeping quiet here. Being inactive and being silent also can be a violation of human rights. That's an example of Coca-Cola in this case, right? That's one thing. Now, what are the result of this? The result of this is basically you speak of influencing the host country. Correct? I am influencing the host country to make policies according to my convenience. Means PNC's convenience. I will say you have to make this policy, I will agree with this, then only I will make investment, otherwise no investment for your country. Correct? Na? That's the way in which they exert pressure on the host country in that case. Second one, they also may direct you to spend less on social and health sector. They put a condition that you have to give the land to us, you have to spend money on this, then only we will invest in your company. So they may put a condition, social sector and health sector may not be invested too much upon that, which is once again a human right violation, directly or indirectly. Okay? And then you have what is called as tax concession. Why Tesla doesn't want to manufacture in India is because they did not give tax benefit. He wanted tax benefit, but the government very clearly said, we don't want to. If you want to manufacture in India, no tax concessions. So Tesla decided we'll manufacture there and send the end product. That is why we are paying double the amount of the cost of that particular vehicle. Okay? That's tax concession which they claim. For example, there is a complaint, once again, even in Andhra Pradesh, land is given for lease for 1 rupee per year. Correct? Now, for example, Lulu Mall here, they gave land for 1 rupee. Now, is that coming under the exploitation of that particular circumstance here? Okay, na? That's how we have to understand basically. Then, do they lobby for deregulation?
Yes.
They don't want any law. Labor law nahi chahiye hame. We have to be free. So they pressurize for deregulation in that case. And remember, the largest beneficiaries are transnational corporation. When you deregularize, the most benefit goes to the TNCs in that case. Eliminate trade barriers, which I think we have World Trade Organization has done. I am not going to that. Then privatize national assets. Okay, na? Remember, these companies may intend to privatize the national assets. When I say national assets means any of your state-owned companies may be diluted. Right? We call it as disinvestment. They may go for disinvestment and foreign companies may start investing into your company. Are you clear? That is where it is also possible the TNC may take control of that company later. Right? Today it is state-owned, tomorrow it can be taken over by some other company. Then the next one and the most important thing. You know that there is something called as a compulsory licensing under intellectual property law. Can you put a condition? They may not permit you to go for a compulsory licensing. Putting condition on the particular country here. The reason is the pharmaceutical companies don't want that product to be available at lesser cost. Are you clear? That's the way in which in the intellectual property scenario we also face the problem with reference to compulsory licensing. States are not permitted to go for a compulsory licensing in certain circumstances. Right? That's also one of the issues. Then when it comes to labor rights and labor issues, all these things can happen. Okay? Very huge destruction of labor rights can happen in the TNC scenario. For example, it can be a forced labor, it can be forced migration, which happened. I'll tell you in the next example. Gender discrimination, caste discrimination and racial discrimination. Cisco had an interesting point in America. It was a case where three IIT students after completing, they got a job in Cisco. They all three were working in Cisco, right? And suddenly one of them alleged that I have been discriminated by way of a caste. The person belonged to scheduled caste. Against two people, he complained that they are discriminated based on caste. Went to the court. The court very clearly said caste doesn't play a role in America. Race plays a role, caste doesn't play a role, so he had no remedy before the court of law. Subsequently, remember, whether it is Cisco, whether it is Apple, whether it is Dell, now all their companies now have included caste discrimination into their employment agreements today. Okay, that is how transformation has taken place even in multinational company where caste also is part of your discrimination process when it comes to employment in this case. Cisco started it basically. Okay, that's one example. Then failure to protect occupational hazard, then child labor, low payment of work for work in that case. I think they are all normal scenario when it comes to transnational cooperation. Then this is more dangerous. Assassination, killings, kidnapping. Remember who is doing it? Transnational corporations are doing it, right? It's not states doing it or it's not a mafia doing it. It's a transnational company doing all these kidnappings and other things. I have a wonderful example for that later. Violently repressing political rights. They don't want trade unions to exist. They don't want political rights to be there. Destroys homes. Environmental degradation can take place. Toxin into pristine environment are released, causing widespread health problems. These are all general issues with reference to transnational cooperation which can happen here. Let me take an example once again. Kilawa massacre. Remember, once again we are going into Congo. Congo, there is a state versus rebel. There is a fight between Congo army and a rebel. I hope you know rebel means. Every country today is facing it, whether it may be Syria, whether it may be Iraq, whether it may be Afghanistan. Everyone used to face rebels at a particular same problem where there was an army versus rebel fight. Now at that stage, remember, it so happened a company called Anvil Mining Company, which was a mining company, supported the army to massacre those rebels, human beings here. I think 70 people were massacred, and how? Basically, it may be of summary execution, it is arbitrary arrest, rape and torture. All these things were done to those people with the help of this company. Why? Because they facilitated the army to do all these things. Unfortunate, but it existed. It is a fact. Okay, now? So it so happened in this case, and when they went to the court, remember, every witnesses were threatened. And no court actually decided in favor of the people concerned except the Human Rights Commission in that particular country. Are you clear? So there was only one case which came into picture here, that is African Commission on Human Rights and People Rights, where the commission went on to actually state compensation was granted here. Means they made the state government liable, the army liable, and told to pay 2.5 billion as compensation in this case, and also prosecute the company for that wrong. But no prosecution took place against the company because it's a transnational corporation. Right? That's one example. You can see how human rights can be degraded to a level of not to prosecute also. That's the way in which we are referring to human rights here. This is the man I was telling you. Right? This man was Stephen Dongiza, American lawyer, basically. Here is a case where Chevron was a company which was earlier Texas, has been involved in an oil-related environmental damage. There was an oil leak, environmental damage happened, and this man was fighting for the people around that particular place. Okay, now? So it so happened, where is that? Amazon basin. It was in Amazon basin where 16 billion gallon of toxic waste was actually released to the pristine environment here, and he stood for the people there. He was fighting the cause of that particular people here because it was a human right and environmental crime in that case. Now, 30,000 people were affected. Imagine the judicial system here, right? 1993 the case was filed. It took 18 years to make a decision, right? Trial court granted 18 billion, reduced to 9.5 million, okay? And then 2011 the judgment came. Today it is 14 years, compensation is not yet paid. Okay? Today also the compensation is not yet paid. You can imagine how powerful the transnational corporation is and existing today in that. Remember, mining is still happening. The company is still functioning in that particular country. But as to the court order is concerned, no one is there to implement that particular court order. That's the way in which you have to look into in this case. Right? And this lawyer was persecuted, saying that in trial court he gave all the false evidence and he was also arrested, house arrest. Even today he is facing that problem. Are you clear? Because he stood for the rights of the people, victims in that case. He is facing problem in America because the company alleged that he was giving all the false evidence and then implicating the company, and that's why he was kept in house arrest and arrested later, and ultimately he is suffering still on that particular line. Then you have other three examples. All these companies are into it. Walmart, then Hershey, and then Nestle. I'll take Walmart because when it came into India, there was a possibility that they have paid around 125 crores to enter into the market. It is nothing but what we call it as crony capitalism. Right? When Walmart came to India, it had paid almost 125 crores to enter into the market, have access into the market in this case. Though directly they could not do. They entered into an agreement with Bharati Airtel and then came into the country in this case. Then you have forcing employees, work off clock without compensation means overtime work is done by them without paying any additional compensation in that case. And whenever Walmart example is, they will lock into your toilets and they will not allow you to go out for a certain period of time. So that's the way in which this Walmart works in some circumstances, right? Then discrimination against women with reference to pay and promotions, it happened, and illegal surveillance also is an allegation against the Walmart in this case. Now come to Hershey, the most important factor is child labor. I think for manufacturing chocolate you need coca. In coca agriculture, cocoa, whatever, right? You need agricultural feed. You have to develop that agricultural feed. For that, they are using children there. So child labor is hugely used by this particular company. And remember, Nestle is no exception. Nestle is also one of the company which actually uses child labor for their manufacturing of chocolate and other things. One very interesting and very bad thing happened is with reference to what is called as baby formula scandal from Nestle. You know, they went to Africa. They sent people in wearing a nurse dress and imposing on the people in Africa that this milk formula is better than your mother's milk. Right? They forced African to start using this Nestle, not to use the mother's milk here, breast milk, because they said it is more poisonous because of the water you are drinking there. And they were successful in that case to make people believe Nestle is better product than a mother's milk. Are you clear? Even today, they are doing business. It's almost running around 11.5 billion per annum. Today's Nestle market in South Africa is around 11.5 billion market in this case. It started in 1970, remember that. Are you clear? That's where we have to understand. Child slaves, then worst plastic polluters. Nestle is considered to be the worst plastic polluters today because they provide bottled water. They are told by 2013 we will eliminate. I doubt the company will do it. Because they have been given targets, they have always been failing to achieve that particular target when it comes to Nestle. Water bottle is one of the polluted products because all of us know how plastic affects the environment as a whole. Right? Oceans are filled with plastic. People are dying, or flora and fauna will be dying on that particular line. That's the way in which I have to take care of. Now, one positive thing was when the shareholders of Walmart met together, for the first time we found something what is called as human right impact assessment. The shareholders agreed that from here onward, they came to know that a lot of complaints are there against Walmart. they for the first time recommended, the shareholders recommended, there must be something called as human right assessment, impact assessment here as to how exactly Walmart is affecting the human rights in that case. So possibly in the right direction we are looking into in that case. Okay. Then I'll go to the first one and the last case because two are contrasting cases. Adam versus Cape Industry, and the last one because that's the judgment which we prevail today, Vedanta Sources versus Konkala Copper versus Longway. The first case. Company is situated in England. It has mining operations in South Africa. It manufactures asbestos and transfers it to New York. From New York, there is another company which is sold from New York, right? So there are four specific companies involved here. Company in UK, company in South Africa which extracts minerals, asbestos, manufactures and sells it to New York. It goes to New York. There they sell it to some other company. While using asbestos, remember, many people suffered from a disease called as asbestosis. Okay, na? It's called as asbestosis. Asbestosis. Okay, it's called as a disease which is caused because of the dust of the asbestos being used. Now the case was in America. The courts in America said that yes, the company will be held liable. However, the subsidiary company had no assets to pay the compensation. So Adam, who was an American citizen, who got the remedy in America, brought a case before the UK court saying that holding company should be held responsible in this case. Okay, na? Holding company should be held responsible because you are responsible for that company as a subsidiary company, you should be held liable. However, the court said, we were not present in America. So in that particular sense, your presence should be felt. Your company should be present in America. We were not present in America. That's the reason why the court held, you are not present in India, hence we are not liable here. The holding company was not held liable in that case. Contrasting these in 2019, it happened in 1990. In 2019, this case came into picture, Vedanta. Now Vedanta is a case where this was a holding company in UK, had a subsidiary company in Zambia, okay. They had a subsidiary company in Zambia, and that company started releasing toxic material into the rivers in the place there, Zambia there, okay na? So basically when this toxic environment happened, they filed a case in the United Kingdom, and remember, almost after 1990, in Adam's case, still Vedanta, there was no such case on that line. Ultimately, the court said, yes, the holding company should be liable here. So the Transnational Corporation was held liable for the environmental damage which caused in Zambia in that particular case. Okay, so 1826 citizens filed a case here, and they succeeded in getting the order, which is just opposite to Adam versus Cape Industries versus this one. Okay, na? That's one thing. And this is a supporting case. Canada versus Cape is a supporting case. Once again, filed a case, the court held liable the company concerned in those cases, right? Then these are two exceptional companies, right? Why I say exceptional? Because when they are submitting their reports, basically Danish biotechnology company, remember they are very specific on social commitment with reference to the company concerned here. Are you clear? They are very specific on that line. And the second company is your British Telecom. Once again, they always look into sustainable development and the society at large. Whenever they act on certain things, these are the two exceptional cases where we find they themselves have adopted the human right concepts into their own company as a whole. Right? That's a two example I am referring to. Then I think I'll okay. Austin versus Michigan State was a case where the question before the court was that whether corporate entity can force state to take policy decisions. Can companies force state to take policy decisions? In the sense, are they so powerful that the state will take policy decisions based on their influence? And the court recognized, yes, there is a possibility. Okay, the state can. For example, corporate wealth can unfairly influence elections also. When elections are influenced, remember, policies also get affected in this case. Okay, na? Because in America, they fight elections based on funding. When the funding is done, they have already fixed what policies I need as a transnational corporation. That is how it works basically. Okay? And then, remember this point. Bigger the transnational corporation is bigger the violation of the human rights law. Do you say that, or do you agree with all the stats, or will you say opposite can also happen? Opposite can also happen, but normally we say the bigger the PNC, the greater the influence likely to be in that case. Now, how do you frame the corporate duties for them? Is there a law? Right? Is there a law for them? How do you establish duties to them? I'll just brush aside. Time is there, ma'am? 5 minutes? 5 minutes. Just I'll brush aside. Okay, so basically they say the transnational corporations can be imposed liability based on what is called as sovereign-based system. When I say sovereign-based system means if you are in a domestic jurisdiction, that sovereign should punish you. Their sovereign will take care of you, how you should be compensating the human rights violation in this case. Okay, so sovereign-based system is to be adopted where the duties of the person concerned here, that is the transnational corporation duty comes into picture saying that yes, I am liable within the domestic feature here. Now can you make it international in that case? Means can you make the companies liable internationally also? That's where we have to look into. That is internalization of corporate accountability and human rights violation. For that we have UDHR. Okay, I think I need not explain all these things. Article 2, 4, 3, 7, all these speak about your human rights and violations. Second specifically speaks about your workmen, labor rights basically provided under Article 23, 24 and 25. Right? So UDHR refers to how labor rights can be protected, which indirectly or directly refers to the transnational corporation should also protect these human rights issues. Okay, that's how we are to look into it. Then, the European Court of Human Rights. Ma'am, you had a question? The answer is this. The European Court of Justice, though they say that the transnational corporation have power to actually pay for the violations which they do make, but however, directly they are not making transnational corporation liable. They are telling state to pay us, they pay the compensation, not the transnational corporation. Okay, na? So ECHR also speaks on that line here. Then you have IMF and WB, the World Bank. Discreetly, they say the transnational corporations are liable. Why? Because they don't directly say that transnational corporations are liable. One of the report which we studied, that is called as the CAD Cameroon Pipeline Report, indirectly refers to a transnational corporation's liability in this case. Yes, TNC can be made liable was indirectly referred in this. See, IMF or the World Bank directly doesn't say that. But one of the report there produced on a petroleum project says that we are responsible for human rights violation. Okay, now the CAD Cameroon, you have the United States, there are 3 statutes for United States. I will not go into the domestic law. So, in United States, these 3 statutes says, wherever the wrong has happened, remember you can file a case in America and get the compensation in America. Okay, all these 3 cases are, the statute says that. I will not go further on that. Then you have International Labour Organization, OECD guidelines. These 2 are important. Global Compact, United Nations Secretary General Responsibility of Transnational Corporations, and the 2003 Corporation, which I will highlight for 1 or 2 minutes. The first one, United Nations Global Compact 2005. There are 10 principles which have come out with this particular global impact, very clearly highlighting 2 direct principles on human rights. Right? They say business to be united for a better world. Okay, the starting word is let us unite the business for a better world. There are 2 principles on human rights, direct principles. Here, the first one is the business should support and respect the protection of internationally proclaimed human rights. See, once again they are telling you should protect and respect. They may not be once again making liable there. Okay, they are telling to protect, respect human rights, and similarly make sure that they are not complicit in the human right violations here or abuses here. So they did not say they will be liable for human right violation. They only said you should protect and promote human right violation should not happen in this case. Okay, now that's how they have to look into. Then how did they derive all these four together? They derived this UN Global Compact here. And remember, you should also know what is 2030 agenda of United Nations. That's very popularly called as Sustainable Development Goals. 17 goals have been fixed. By 2023, all the countries have to comply with this 17 guidelines which have been fixed by United Nations Global Compact of 2005. Then comes these other principles. I think I need not go. It's reference to labor law, it's reference to environmental law separately. Those 10 guidelines or principles of that statute says that these are the things which has to be taken care of. But indirectly referring to human right violation once again. Okay. Then one more important point is corruption. They also speak something about anti-corruption. Please remember, that's one of the biggest problems which we have when it comes to even the transnational corporations are concerned. They pay huge money to enter into the market. Are you clear? Whether it is Pfizer, whether it is any big company, remember they invest huge money into the country where they want to invest, open the market, and their corruption starts. The bureaucrats take money and then allow the company violating the norms, deviating the policy matters, and then allowing the multinational companies to work there. That's the danger thing which has to be taken care of. Then comes the 2003 norms here, which very clearly says responsibility of PLCs and other business enterprise with regard to human rights. 2003, which speaks about three pillars. The principal pillar is one, the state duty to protect human rights. See, here also they are telling it is a state duty to protect human rights. One. Second, corporate responsibility to respect human rights. Here also they are telling you are not responsible, you should respect human rights. The third one is access to effective remedies for the victim here. So provide remedies for the victim of that particular wrong or whatever the case may be. Then you have 2011, which remember 2003 did not come into effect. No country accepted it overrightly, right? However, in 2011, they once again recognized this 2003 law and said yes, it can be protected. Okay, na? But there also they didn't say directly telling that transnational corporations should be liable in those cases. Then there are around obligations here, general obligations. Then you have obligation relating to consumer protection, obligation relating to environmental protection are there in this 2003 guidelines. Okay. Then these are some of the things which I'll skip. Then please remember, one of the main organ of United Nations once again, in his special representative of human rights said three things have to be taken into consideration. One is due diligence, right? Every transnational corporation should conduct a due diligence before they act. The second one is basically be aware, prevent, address adverse human rights abuse or implications in that case or impacts in this particular case. So they very clearly caution the transnational corporation should be taking care of these things specifically here. In the sense, they went with the do no harm principle. Okay, do no harm principle, that transnational corporation should not do any harm in that case. Okay, then as to mass human rights violations are concerned, no law exists. When I say mass human right violation means hundreds of people are suffering from human rights. We have no remedy before the international scenario here. Then come to Indian Supreme Court. 3-4 cases to highlight it. Because today they have a responsibility towards the community. Means the state has a responsibility towards the towards the community based on public welfare is the highest law. Based on that principle, the court said yes, workmen can be heard in a winding up petition also, though the company law did not provide for. Then you have special reference case with reference to the capitalism should not be permitted.
Means crony capitalism should not be permitted. If state is part of that crony capitalism, remember it is a violation of constitutional principles. Okay, na? Crony capitalism, that's what we have to refer to. Then you have the Sanjivayya case where development versus human face was referred by the Supreme Court here. It is popularly called as Sanjivayya case. I think recently it was in news because one of the vice president candidate was the person who delivered this judgment, right? Okay, so basically Nandini Sundar versus state of Chhattisgarh. Remember there, the mining operations were permitted by the state to both domestic as well as transnational corporation. Here, the question was how far the tribal rights were affected. Remember, you are acquiring the land of the tribal rights are affected in this case, and because of that, there is revolution happening, right? Are you clear? So for that, to avoid that revolution, you are using the concept of what is called as special police officers. That's where we speak of a Sanjivayya coming in against the revolutionist here. Now that particular part, the Supreme Court said nothing doing, remove those special officers here, you can't give the guns to them, let them be given the job, you should not give guns to the people concerned here. Okay? The young people were given guns to fight against the revolutionists there. So the Supreme Court clearly said nothing doing, give them jobs instead of giving guns to them, and the court said something called as it is nothing but developmental terrorism. They said development without human face is nothing but it is a developmental terrorism which cannot be accepted by the any society as a whole, and natural resources belong to whom? To the public. Remember, for that I think you have three wonderful judgments. I will not go into that. Association of Natural Gas versus Union of India, Kaveri Water Dispute Issue, and then you have RNLR versus RN. All these three cases refer to a scenario where the court said the natural resources belong to the public, you and I, it doesn't belong to anyone. Okay? Protect that natural resources was held, connecting to this specific case here. MC Mehta, I did not say, absolute liability, are you clear? Irrespective of whether you have taken duty of care or not, whether there was no negligence or not, you are liable. Transnational corporation can be held liable under that heading basically. Okay? And consumer education research was a case where they permitted to conduct an asbestos business based on the declaration made that they will comply with all the laws. So that's one case which has to be taken into consideration here. Role of civil society. Two best examples I can give you is, I told you something about baby milk formula. Now the International Federation of Human Rights and other organizations in Africa fought against this Nestle and other people who are actually going against the baby milk formula here. Okay? They fought against that successfully. To some extent they have stopped that particular perception that Nestle is better than mother's milk here. Okay? They have stopped that. I think that's one of the things which actually has taken care of the things concerned here. Similarly, street shops in textile industry. For example, women staying in the industrial condition in a bad shape, and this organization helped the industry to have specific spaces for women, especially on that particular line. So the Civil Rights Society has done something positive towards these two or three incidents basically. Okay? Then corporate social responsibility. Lastly, does corporate social responsibility bring in no human right violation possibility, or is it just a gimmick made by the corporate entities for you? Are you clear? In majority of the cases, they are not real, they are just for your understanding that yes, we are also doing some social justice. Okay? And this has been proved time and again here. And remember, ultimately, Peter Drucker says, once again I go to Adam Smith's principle and say, Peter Drucker says, no customer is dumb. When I say this, it means you also want that, I also want that, irrespective of my human rights violations. Are you clear? Yes or no? Because what? I get compromised because I don't have another avenue to go to. Correct? No, I may not get a job If I leave this job, I will not get another job. So basically, the consumer is not dumb on that particular line. He will accept to whatever condition the employer is putting in there. Unfortunate, but it happens in life. Okay? Comes responsibility. Yes or no? You agree with this? It has to be, but I don't know how far it will be real, in real sense. Okay? Winston Churchill said, and this is a wonderful quote I found here. Give to every human being every right that you claim for yourself. Are you clear? I think that's where human rights get protected. Are you clear? If I want respect, I should give the same respect to the other party. Are you clear? That's where human right comes into picture. And in that sense, lastly, can you expect consciousness from a transnational corporation? Conscience. Do you have conscience? Do you have morality within the transnational corporation? For that, I conclude by saying, who will tame the tiger? Very difficult, right? Thank you.
I would like to declare the results of the RTI drafting competition, which was evaluated again by Dayananda Murthy sir and respective Neelima ma'am. And the winner is Aditya Akunuri.
It was one of the most wonderful lectures I've ever heard in my life. I profoundly thank my co-members, the members of CHR, the whole Center for Human Rights and Duties. Wholeheartedly thanks Dr. Dayananda Murthy sir for his wonderful lecture on human rights. We were one small thing. We were thinking that how would Dayananda Murthy sir actually correct transnational companies and human rights is what we were thinking. So we were even more excited that we were very interested in this. And sir, I guess summary of the whole lecture, I guess it can be done in one single sentence that our dear Dayananda Murthy sir said. Being silent is also a human rights violation. There is no more wonderful statement that can summarize his whole lecture. And I thank Honorable Registrar sir for coming. I thank Honorable Vice Chancellor sir and the administration of this university for helping us organize this wonderful lecture. And last but not the least, I would like to propose a standing ovation for Dayananda Murthy sir for giving this wonderful lecture.